The 4-Hour Workweek, written by Tim Ferriss, summarized by detailed book summaries. Don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 1, Cautions and Comparisons. How to burn the script and design your own life. There's a moment when you stop and think, is this really it? You wake up to the same alarm, the same commute, the same desk under the same fluorescent lights. You're told this is the way. Work hard, pay your dues, climb the ladder, and eventually, maybe, you get a slice of freedom. But deep down, something feels off. Tim Ferriss opens with a slap to that routine. He doesn't waste time softening the blow. The life most people are living is one of quiet resignation. And worse, it's by design. Not your design, but someone else's. We've been sold a blueprint that no longer fits the world we live in. He calls it a deferred life plan. Work like hell now, so you can enjoy life later. But what if later never comes? Or what if, when it does, your body's too tired or your soul too worn out to enjoy it? This first chapter isn't just a warm-up. It's a call to arms. It's Ferriss saying, wake up. The rules you're playing by were written before email, before remote work, before the internet gave you options. And it's time to question everything. He introduces a concept of the new rich NR. These are the people who've escaped the default settings of society. They don't trade time for money. They don't wait for retirement to travel or start living. They design their lives around nobility, time freedom, and meaningful experiences, right now. But to join them, Ferriss says, you need to flip the script. Because the old game, go to school, get a job, work 40 hours a week for 40 years, is broken. Worse, it's dangerous. It sells stability, but delivers stress. It promises security, but gives you just enough comfort to stay stuck. So Ferriss doesn't give you another productivity hack. He hands you a lit match and points at the script. Burn it. He doesn't say that to be edgy. He says it because he lived it. He built a business the old way. Long hours, non-stop hustle. Every decision bottlenecked through him. And even though the money came, so did the panic attacks. So did the disconnection. So did the realization that success without freedom is just another form of slavery. That's when he disappeared. Literally, he vanished to Europe, then South America, then Asia. No meetings, no inbox, no responsibilities, at least not in the traditional sense. And yet, the world didn't collapse. His business didn't implode. In fact, it ran better than ever. And that's when he realized we've been taught to worship work instead of designing life. In this chapter, Ferriss doesn't hand you a roadmap. He hands you a mindset. He shows you what it means to redefine wealth, not as money, but as freedom of time and place. He compares the traditional rich to the new rich. The traditional rich have money but no time. They're locked in offices, tied to schedules, owned by their businesses. The new rich may earn less, but they live more. They work remotely. They structure their income around systems. They disappear when they want. And they're rich where it matters most, in autonomy. This is where Ferriss lays the first major distinction: absolute income versus relative income. The guy earning $1 million a year, working 80 hours a week from a downtown high-rise, that's absolute income. But his time is gone. His freedom is a mirage. Now compare him to someone earning $50,000, working 10 hours a week, from anywhere in the world. That's relative income. And that person, they're rich. Ferriss's point is sharp. It's not how much you make. It's how much freedom that income buys you. And most people are so fixated on numbers, they forget the goal was never money. The goal was the life money was supposed to buy. He challenges you to think in terms of lifestyle design, not career advancement. That means asking better questions. Not how can I earn more, but how can I live better with less time and stress? Not how can I retire someday, but how can I build many retirements throughout my life? He asks you to stop optimizing your life around fear, of going broke, of looking lazy, of stepping off the path. Because most people aren't chasing dreams. They're avoiding disasters. And that's no way to live. So this first chapter is a clearing, a pause, a chance to zoom out and ask, what if everything I was taught about work, success, and productivity was wrong? Because if you're listening to this, something inside you already knows. There has to be a different way. A way that doesn't require burning out to be worthy. A way that doesn't hinge on waiting until you're 65 to start living. A way where work supports your life, not the other way around. Tim Ferriss ends this chapter not with instruction, but with a choice. You can keep playing the game by the old rules, chasing promotions, padding your resume, and dreaming of weekends. Or you can burn the script, embrace the discomfort of questioning it all, and start building a life that feels like freedom, not a paycheck. And if you're ready, the journey into that new life starts now. Chapter 2, Rules That Change the Rules. What if the world didn't work the way you thought it did? What if everything, from your 9-to-5 job to the concept of retirement, was just a script handed to you, and you never stopped to ask, who wrote this? That's exactly the question Tim Ferriss poses in Chapter 2. He doesn't just want you to break the rules. He wants you to replace them entirely. Because if you're going to escape the rat race, live anywhere, and join the new rich, you can't follow the same tired game plan everyone else is using. He opens with a bold statement. Everything popular is wrong. That sounds dramatic until you look around and realize most people are burned out, overcommit, and stuck in jobs they don't love. They spend decades saving up for retirement while life passes them by. So maybe popular wisdom is the problem. This chapter is all about challenging assumptions. The first assumption? That retirement is the goal. Ferriss flips that idea on its head. Retirement, he says, is a hedge against the worst-case scenario. It's the fallback if your career sucks and you hate what you do. But for the new rich, retirement isn't a dream. They don't want to postpone life. They want to live it now, in intervals, through what he calls mini-retirements. Instead of slaving away for 40 years and hoping to enjoy life later, why not take breaks along the way? Why not work in short bursts, build remote income streams, and unplug for 3 months at a time? Retirement is for people who sacrifice the present. The new rich design their lives to enjoy both the now and the future. Then Ferriss comes for another sacred cow, the idea that work has to be hard to be meaningful, that struggle equals value. But he sees it differently. Struggle, he says, often just means inefficiency. People stay busy to avoid making the hard choices. They check email obsessively. They sit through pointless meetings. They measure their worth in hours rather than results. Ferriss wants you to flip that, to stop thinking in terms of input and start focusing on output. Because the goal isn't to be busy, it's to be effective. He introduces a principle that underpins everything else. Being effective is doing the right things. Being efficient is doing things right. And if you're doing the wrong things well, you're just moving faster in the wrong direction. Then comes one of the most important concepts in the book, relative income. Here's the breakdown. Absolute income is how much you make. Relative income is how much you make per hour, and whether you control your time. So the person who makes $50,000 working 10 hours a week from a laptop in Portugal is doing better than the person who makes $200,000, but works 80 hours and never sees their family. The rich Ferriss is talking about aren't rich in dollars. They're rich in time, flexibility, and choice. And that leads to a major insight. Time is your most valuable currency. You can always make more money. But your time, once it's gone, it's gone. So why do people spend it like it's worthless? Because they're playing by broken rules. Another rule he breaks, the idea that you must pick one career path and stick to it. Ferriss calls this out as a career's identity trap. You don't need to be one thing for life. You can reinvent. You can pivot. You can design a life where work is just one piece, not your entire identity. He points to something almost no one talks about. Interest and energy are cyclical. What you love today might bore you in 5 years. That's normal. You don't need to find a forever passion. You need flexibility, space to explore, to adapt, to walk away from what no longer fits. And here's where Ferriss offers a lifeline. You don't have to abandon everything overnight. You just have to start questioning. Start testing. Start poking holes in assumptions you've never challenged. What if you could take 3 months off and your business still ran? What if you could earn in dollars and live where expenses are a third of the cost? What if you didn't have to answer emails on Sunday? What if your value wasn't tied to being busy? These aren't pipe dreams. They're choices. But you have to question the script. Ferriss also urges selective ignorance. Stop trying to know everything. Unplug from the news. Quit obsessing over social media. Choose your inputs intentionally. He calls it a low information diet because most of what we consume is noise, and the less noise, the more clarity. At the end of this chapter, he offers a truth that cuts through the fog. The common sense rules of the real world are a fragile collection of socially reinforced illusions. Most people never escape the rat race because they never question the cage. But Ferriss wants you to see the bars, to realize they were always imaginary. And once you do that, you don't need to hustle harder. You just need to step through the open door. He's not selling shortcuts. He's offering awareness, a different lens, a new set of rules. One where freedom, not busyness, is the goal. One where working less doesn't mean you're lazy. It means you're smart. So if you're ready, he says, stop waiting, stop assuming, stop following, and start designing a life that actually feels like your own. Chapter 3, Dodging Bullets. Fear setting and escaping paralysis. Before you leap into designing your dream lifestyle, Ferriss stops you in your tracks with a question, maybe the most uncomfortable one of all. What's really stopping you? He already knows the answer. It's not money. It's not time. It's not skill. It's fear. Fear is the invisible wall. Not fear of failure exactly, but fear of the unknown. Fear of what might go wrong. Fear of what others might think. Fear of losing something we already hate, but have learned to tolerate. Ferriss gets this. He didn't start living the 4-hour workweek by being fearless. He started by confronting his fear head-on. And the tool he used wasn't visualization or affirmations. It was something he calls fear setting. Most people are familiar with goal setting, but goal setting assumes you're already in motion. Ferriss realized that the real reason most people don't take action isn't lack of vision, it's paralysis. And that paralysis almost always comes from a vague, swirling anxiety about what could go wrong. So how do you defuse that fear? You define it. You drag it into the light. You force it to get specific. Ferriss lays out the 3-part process of fear setting like a surgeon with a scalpel, clean, precise, and deeply personal. Step 1, define the nightmare. He asks you to imagine the worst-case scenario. Literally, what's the absolute worst thing that could happen if you quit your job, if you started your own business, if you took a mini retirement, or asked your boss for remote work? Spell it out in graphic detail. Will you go broke? Will people laugh at you? Will you end up living under a bridge? Because here's the trick. Once you describe a fear in detail, it usually loses its power. Our minds exaggerate everything we don't look at directly. But once you get specific, it's almost always survivable. Step 2, prevent. Now that you've defined the worst, ask, what could I do to prevent that from happening? What safety nets could I build? What conversations, preparations, or contingencies would reduce the risk? Ferriss reminds us that most fears are based on assumptions, not reality. And most of the time, a few proactive moves can defuse them before they materialize. Step 3, repair. Let's say the worst does happen. Then what? What could you do to fix it? Who could you call? How would you bounce back? Ferriss points out that even if the worst case happens, the recovery is almost always faster and easier than we think. People adapt fast. He uses himself as proof. He lost nearly all his savings more than once, and every time, he recovered stronger. Then he flips the exercise. After spelling out the fear, he asks, what's the cost of inaction? What happens if you don't make the leap? If you stay stuck? If you keep living the same day over and over? This is where the real danger lives. Not in the risk of action, but in the slow decay of doing nothing. He asks you to imagine your life 6 months from now. 1 year, 5 years. If you continue down the same path, same job, same habits, same limitations, how will that feel? That discomfort? That dull ache in your chest? That's the pain of regret. And Ferriss wants you to feel it now, before it becomes permanent. Then, he walks you through a different kind of cost-benefit analysis. Instead of only evaluating risk, he asks you to weigh potential upside. What could go right if you acted? What new freedoms would you gain? What skills would you learn? What relationships, travel, peace of mind could you experience? Most people overestimate what they have to lose and underestimate what they have to gain. Ferriss forces you to flip the scale. He also drops this gem. People will think what they think, then forget about it. One of the biggest fears is judgment. But Ferriss reminds us that the world is busy. People aren't obsessed with your decisions. They're too wrapped up in their own lives. So don't let imaginary critics keep you trapped in real misery. And then, almost as a whisper, he reminds you of the deepest truth of all. Someday is a dangerous word. It's a code for never. If it matters, schedule it. If it doesn't, delete it. He doesn't want you to take reckless risks. He wants you to take measured action. Action built on clarity, not chaos. That's what fear setting is for. It's not about pretending fear doesn't exist. It's about making sure fear doesn't drive the car. Ferriss admits he still uses this process regularly. Every time he faces a big leap, a book launch, a move, a new project, he sits down and maps it out. Not to remove the fear, but to make peace with it. To let clarity replace chaos. To feel the fear and move forward anyway. So chapter 3 isn't just strategy, it's a mindset shift. It gives you a flashlight in the dark room of doubt. It teaches you how to walk toward the thing you're afraid of and say, I see you. Let's talk. Because once you name the monster under the bed, you realize it's just a shadow. And once you realize that, you're free.